Okay, it looks like we're live. Hello. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening. My name is Michaela Lee. I am here representing Lead, Ohio, and we're here with Christina Vera, who is running for Columbus City School Board. So as always, just wanted to reiterate a couple points. We are doing a candidate storytelling project. It's a collaborative operation between Ohio Women's Alliance and Lead Ohio. And we're working to uplift the voices of women of color around the state who are trying to better their communities through electoral pathways. Both Ohio Women's Alliance and Lead Ohio are nonpartisan 501c4 organizations. So this storytelling project is not an endorsement. We're just here to uplift women and their stories across the state, regardless of political affiliation. And this was all done through an application and interview process that is open to all. And we are so grateful to you, Christina, for joining us today. I know we've done a couple of these, so I know you know the spiel, but wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your background and your story and tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. And it's just so fitting because it is the kickoff to Hispanic Heritage Month, which is really exciting. A lot of great opportunity to dive deeper into culture and learn more about just the Hispanic population and the contributions. As a Latina, as a Puerto Rican, for me, being able to give back and serve in this capacity has truly been, just truly an honor for me. And so, I grew up here in Columbus, Ohio. I went to all Columbus City schools. And, for me, growing up here has really been such an honor and a pleasure for me. Really looking at, Columbus in a way of, just to see the growth over the years. Coming here as a kiddo, from New York, really just seeing how different our city looks, and really being able to see the growth in certain areas, which also leads me as to why my passion is so deeply rooted here in Columbus and serving our community. And so, I'm a mom of 3 kids, actually, 2 of which are still in the Columbus City School District. One is in college. A lot of people are like, you have a kid in college? I'm like, yes, I have a kid in college. And so my husband and I both live here in Columbus, Ohio. He too is a native, also went to Columbus City Schools. And so, I've been very fortunate to be able to spend most of my professional career working specifically in the nonprofit sector. So working with youth and families has been, just a pleasure and an honor that I get to do every single day. And so I've worked with several different nonprofits in the community, schools, districts, in addition to corporate partners. And so also being able to help co-found a nonprofit organization here in Central Ohio called Femergy. And, the whole mission and premise behind Femergy is very much in alignment with Ohio Women's Alliance mission. And that's really to propel girls and making sure that our girls have access to equal opportunities, educational opportunities, mentoring, workforce readiness programs. So we specialize in working with middle and high school girls. And then we also work with entry-level women professionals. And so so that's just a little bit about my background and my love here for Columbus.
That's amazing. And so many great things about your background that I definitely want to dive a little bit more into later. But just to start with, yeah, exactly as you mentioned, we're kicking off Hispanic Heritage Month. And something that's been really interesting, especially with this series that we've done, in addition to just candidates who are running across the state, is the increase in specifically Latina representation and women who are running for office who are Latina across the state. And can you talk a little bit more about, what prompted you to run, even, as we are excited to increase the numbers, but currently there aren't very many elected Latinas across the state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, being an alumni of Columbus City Schools, just from the perspective, taking myself back to that young girl who sat in our classrooms, who had very much some of the same economic challenges that many of our families face. I always had a deep root for service because I was served. I often think back to, people always tend to ask you, like, what was that defining pivotal moment for you in determining what you wanted to do or where you possibly could see yourself? And for me, honestly, it was around third grade where, I went to one of our schools here. And like many of our kiddos, school was a safe haven for me. It was a place that I knew, I would have breakfast every day, I would have lunch. They always knew if I needed extra coats or, school supplies, because my family struggled. They struggled, economically, like many families do here in Central Ohio. And so school was that resource for me. And so, I found myself in the third grade and it was almost lunchtime actually. And I just remember staring at the clock because it was a hot pack pizza day. And for people who have been in the district, you know how excited you get about that hot pack pizza day. And so I just remember, like, I couldn't wait to go to lunch. I was really, really excited about it. And the bell rang and I remember hearing my name called, and I instantly froze because I was that kid that never wanted to be in trouble, never wanted, to hear my name randomly called. I was nervous. And so I looked back and it was Mrs. Hughes. And Mrs. Hughes was this sweet woman who was like a school aide. Like she helped like print like papers for the teacher. She wasn't a teacher. She was like a almost like an assistant. She did multiple things in our school. And I remember just looking back and I walked up to her and I said, "Am I in trouble?" And she said, "No, you're not in trouble. I always pop into your classroom around this time and I always kind of see you wandering around, like looking around." And she said, I want to ask you a question and I want you to be honest with me." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, can you read?" And, I instantly started to tear up because I couldn't. And I had gotten all the way up to the third grade and, kind of just slipped under that radar where I wasn't reading, I wasn't proficient in a lot of the areas that I was supposed to be by that grade level. And Mrs. Hughes said, "You know what, don't worry about it. I'm going to get special permission and I'm going to work with you." And she did. And me and a couple other kiddos, she just kind of like mentored us, came in through during certain parts of our class. We stood in during recess sometimes just to be able to work with her. And by the end of that third grade year, I was completely caught up. Not only did I learn how to read, but I actually really developed a love for writing. And so, just like Mrs. Hughes, I knew then that I wanted to be able to go the extra mile in some capacity. Like, I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. But because she took the time to notice me, I recognized quickly on, like, that's something that I wanted to be able to give to somebody else one day. And so for me, thinking back to those moments and then becoming a mother, still seeing a lot of the same challenges our school district is still presently having. These are issues that have gone on for generations. Our city is progressing in certain ways, but our district never seems to be able to stay at that level of progression. And, so for me, it's truly coming from a place of service, a place of wanting to give back, like Mrs. Hughes gave back to me, to help our district be what I know it can be. And that's a thriving district where we provide equity for all of our kids. We have a little over 46,000 kids in our district, well over 109 school buildings, but many of which are not, there's not equity across the board there. And so for me, it's about wanting to give our students, teachers, staff really the educational experience that they need and deserve, And so just firsthand experiencing that and still seeing that as a community member through the nonprofit work, as a parent. I mean, these are things that can be changed, but it takes the right, progressive leadership that's willing to go the extra mile to make these changes happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking, specifically about school board, and I think we've all started to get a little bit more aware of the impact that school boards have with, the conversations going on and with COVID and everything like that. And so in this time of, recovering from a pandemic and, talking about race and social injustice and this moment that we're in. But in addition to the things that you talked about, issues that the schools have been facing since you've been in school,
Mhm.
what kind of perspective, what kind of things do you want to accomplish if you're able to be elected?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's imperative that we have, school facilities that are safe for our kids. that are functional for our kids. And so, a big part of what we're seeing an uptick and even in violence in our community, and many of that violence is rooted within the youth. And so I think it really boils down to creating an environment within our school facilities that our students feel safe, they feel heard, they feel supported, and that they're actually receiving the wraparound services that they need. Many of our young people are dealing with homelessness, they're dealing with hunger, they're dealing with, parental or guardians that also deal with mental health issues. And so I think we have to address that. We have to combat, what our kiddos need to be able to come into a building to actually sit down to learn. So we really have to be intentional about making sure that we're creating equity and inclusion amongst all of our school buildings so that all of our students have access to those wraparound services. Our staff have access to those resources and services, and ultimately, really being able to, serve our kids for them as individuals. And then looking at, the facilities, making sure that we actually have buildings that have adequate heating and cooling. I mean, this is 2021. The fact that we have buildings in our district that do not have adequate heating and cooling, and it has taken this long, for these issues to be addressed. A pandemic had to come for, suddenly just for individuals to start to recognize that we have ventilation issues, we have AC issues, we have heating issues, we have spacing, overcrowding in our buildings. So these are things that have to be handled sooner rather than later. This is not futuristic planning that can be done. These are things that should have been done and need to be done as soon as possible. And so, I think those are the two top priority areas for me, in addition to, really pushing for more progressive curriculums. We're missing progressive opportunities to really equip our young people with the skills and the support that they need to be able to go out into the workforce or go out into, college or whatever they desire to do. But we have to be intentional about providing programs like home economics, financial literacy, entrepreneurship courses, trade programs. I mean, these are industries that need more people, especially, we have a low representation in women in a lot of these sectors as well. And so, a district as large as Columbus City School, we're one of the largest urban districts. We're missing an opportunity to really be a staple district in providing our kids with the proper resources, facilities, and wraparound services that they need.
Absolutely. And you touched on another thing I want to dive into a little bit deeper was that Columbus is a very large school district and growing. And so
Mm-hmm.
we recently saw the census numbers, and Columbus itself is rapidly growing. And, obviously there's some adjustments that will be needed to adjust that.
Mm-hmm.
But another piece that we talked about with another woman a couple weeks ago is that a lot of that growth is within minority and new American populations. And so there's kind of a two pronged kind of situation going on. Do you want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I'm learning more and more. We have to be intentional about creating equity. And I'll continue to say that because, to your point, we do have a large new American population. And so, looking at our operational procedures of how we're even enrolling students into school, oftentimes, whether a kid speaks full English, was born here, ultimately, if they mark on their application that English is not the first language spoken in their household, they're automatically placed in ESL classes. And so we have to look at how are we really welcoming diversity in our community, because not looking at an individual for their capability, their ability to speak fluid English just like you and I are, and automatically assuming that they need ESL classes. Whereas you have kids sitting in classes that they speak English, they should be in other programming, are dealing with those issues of being essentially, kind of profiled in a sense. And so we have to be careful about that. We have to be intentional about making sure that all diverse students do feel welcome. And then in addition to that, really looking at expanding our technology support. As you've seen with COVID-19, the effects of having to go digital so quickly, a lot of that tech support only came in one language. So we did not have multi-language support services. We did not, even with some of the surveys and things that come out electronically, that's generally all in English. Although our website is, multi-language, you can, transcribe that into many different languages, but there's extra layers of support and steps that need to be thought about when you're talking about communities that do speak more than one language. And so I do think we have an area of opportunity there that we really should look at the cultural dimensions across the board and making sure that we really do have representation in all sectors that work for our families.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my last question, well, not my last question, but another question related to you, in running for school board specifically. So this is a school board that is entirely Democratic. And so, what is the difference between running in a place like Columbus, where you would be joining kind of a more friendly group of people versus, if you were running in a place where you were kind of running up against Republicans. So, and it's a situation where you're kind of running with people instead of against them. And, there is a really important distinction of the perspective that you would bring as opposed to, other like-minded people in an urban area. So can you talk a little bit about, what about you and your candidacy is exciting?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me personally, for many, as you know, school board is nonpartisan. And I think that, regardless of elected officials, like political affiliations, we have to do what's right for people. And so I think a lot of what we've seen over the years in terms of just all of this combating, just to be right or just to prove, our side, we're missing people at the heart of that. And so, as a community servant, as a Democrat, yes, I am a Democrat and very proud of that. My core values are in alignment with the Democratic Party's core values. However, I'm going to always put people first. And I think that's something that, whether you're running for school board or any type of elected official, it should always be about the people. So collectively, I think we have to get to a place of, like I said, putting people before politics, really, bringing the focus back to what do our young people want? How do we give them agency to say what they think their district should look like? How do we, engage family members and other community members who don't have kids in our district? We have a large population here in Franklin County, but you would be surprised how high of a percentage of Franklin County members are actually don't have kids in the school district, nor do they have any type of affiliation. So we have to activate those, community members to letting them know, like, whether you have kids or not, it still matters to have a thriving school district. We cannot be a progressive city and have a failing school district. And that's what I need all community members, all elected officials, Democrat, Republican. We have to rally around our district. We have to rally around the changes that are needed to give our kids a fighting chance. We continue to see the uptick of homicides in our community where youth we just lost another Columbus City school kiddo, earlier this week to gun violence. And so this is no longer an issue about parties. This is an issue about our community, our kids. What can we do as community members who are vested? That's why you run for office, because you want to give every skill that you possibly can to create change. And if that's not why you run for office, then I would encourage, that individual to review that. But for me personally, it's not about politics. It's about how do we activate change and how do we bring all stakeholders to the table so that they are also a part of that change, and that we're creating legislation and policies that are really for the people, and that they feel that way and they feel connected to the work that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that you said about that. So my next question, it's not super political at all, just a little bit more personal. So I know with you going through Columbus City Schools and your kids going through Columbus City schools, I'm sure that you engaged with some sort of after school sport. And, as a potential school board member, that'll be something that will definitely take up some of your time and attention. So, do you have a high school, middle school sport of choice and a team that you support? I know we can get really contentious with like NFL and college, but high school and middle school gets a little crazy.
Yeah, I love sports. Like I'm not, even if I don't know what's happening, like I'm in the game. I want to know. My husband hates watching sports with me because I have a lot of questions. So actually just last Friday I went to Centennial's I believe first home game of the season. And it was surreal because I went to Centennial for my first couple of years of high school before I transferred to Brookhaven. And just being on campus and just seeing, like, the field used to look so big to me. And so really looking, I mean, fall sports is probably, there's something in the air with fall sports, but I played basketball, so I was actually a basketball player in middle school and high school. And so my sport of choice is probably always going to be basketball, and I will support all 100, all of our schools. I'm not going to have a favorite. I mean, my high school closed down, so Brookhaven is no longer open. Although we know Brookhaven was the top school for sports, just everybody has to accept that. So since my school is closed at this point, I welcome to support everyone's school teams. But truly, I love sports. I will be out as many games as I possibly can. Hopefully, COVID will allow a little more sports to happen this season. And so, yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to just getting out, seeing the kids in their element, and just being a part of that.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I might have to. My mom is a middle school girls basketball coach, which is very funny
Oh,
because I played middle school girls basketball for 1 year and then I got cut because I don't have any coordination.
oh,
So we also would be a fall sports basketball family over here. So that's
yes.
so exciting.
Yeah, and my daughter is actually playing softball too this year for the
Oh
first
wow.
time. She played spring ball, and she's hopeful to play for her middle school. So she's finally in seventh grade, and so she's like super excited. And so yeah, softball is that's a sport I never played before. I'm learning the terminology, so that's a new one that I'm adding to my lineup of sports.
Yeah, good, good. That's so great. Well, just to, kind of wrap up our conversation here, thanks so much for taking some time out. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything else that we didn't quite get to you want to mention?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I kind of lightly touched on earlier, I really want viewers to understand that, you do not have to be an elected official to create change in your communities. I think it starts with us as community members. And so, really looking at the state of our district, I want to be able to talk to anyone who has an interest in helping create these changes. We have a laundry list of things that have to happen, and that include facilities, that include curriculums, that include wraparound services. There's just a lot of different things, but you as an individual community member, you have the power to play a part in that. And so, for me, running for Columbus City School Board, it's something that I really feel called to do. But I want to do that with my community. I cannot do it without my community. I can't do it without the rest of the board. It's a collective. Like, no one person has the power to change everything, but the collective, we can. And so, I would just ask, as a community member watching, what can you do to help create that change? So, sharing this video, supporting candidates that are running. It takes a lot to run for positions like this, and there's many other positions. We have to rally behind good people who genuinely want to see change in our communities. Those groups that are doing those grassroots efforts, like Ohio Women's Alliance and Lead Ohio and these other agencies, like, get behind agencies and individuals who really want to make the city you live in, the city you raise your family in, great. Because ultimately, this work gets heavy. It's not always comfortable. It's not always like super popular. But together we can create these changes. And so I ask for your consideration to join me in fighting for our school district. Christina Vera, I'll be on the ballot November the 2nd. So November 2nd is actually election day. Early voting starts October the 5th. And so, get out to the polls, research your candidates, support candidates like myself, because we need all the support that we can get. And so, vote for me, Christina Vera, candidate for Columbus City School Board. I hope to earn your vote, and I definitely hope to earn your support as we are together in this, trying to save and do what we need to do for our school district.
Thanks so much for hopping on. And yeah, we will be in touch. And I'm really excited to see what you're able to accomplish this year.
Thank you so much, Michaela. I really appreciate the opportunity, and have a wonderful night. And I will be
You as
checking
well.
back in with you soon.
All right. Sounds good. See you
Thanks.
later.
Bye-bye.